Nick, I want to ask you about this clip that's been roiling the left and the anti-genocide community online for the last few days. It's a clip of Bernie Sanders.
There is no doubt that Hamas, a terrorist organization, began this terrible war with its barbaric October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. Clearly, Israel, as any other country that was so attacked, had the right to defend itself against Hamas.
Some people now, of course, Nick, say, look, Bernie is right. It's fair for him to want to have that preamble. What do you say to him? What do you say to those people?
That's nothing but disgusting pro-genocide propaganda, and this is what Bernie Sanders and AOC does. They exist to dumb down the left. They exist to shift what it means to be a socialist to the right. So he claims that he cares about Palestinian people, but Hamas is filled with Palestinians. Do you guys know the majority of Hamas, around 80 to 90% of them, are orphans? People who have been orphaned by the Israeli regime. Why is it acceptable to dehumanize these people who are just militia fighters fighting for their state? So Israel has blocked the creation of the Palestinian state that was outlined by the UN Charter. And guys, trust me, Bernie Sanders knows everything I'm about to tell you right now. He is a propagandist for the Zionist regime. The creation of Israel was contingent on the creation of a Palestinian state, something that the Israel and the Likud party is openly bragging about blocking. They just had to vote another one of many in the Israeli parliament that say they will never, ever recognize, and it passed overwhelmingly, the creation of the Palestinian state. So does Bernie do he believe that the Palestinians don't have the right to defend themselves and have the right to self-determination? Because since Israel is illegally, because the UN has demanded that Israel facilitate the creation of a Palestinian state, but they refuse to. So Israel is out of compliance with international law. They are a rogue terrorist state. That's not me being radical. That is what the UN is stating, because Israel is blocking the creation of a Palestinian state. So if you're a Palestinian, you have the right enshrined in international law to engage in the resistance against the apartheid state that is preventing your right to self-determination. But Bernie Sanders believes that any Palestinian who take up their legal right to take up arms against Israel deserves to die. Bernie Sanders claims to care about Palestinians, but all the Palestinian orphans, the people had nowhere to go. No other choice but to oppose the criminal oppressors. Bernie Sanders wants them dead.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family. What a week we had last week, wasn't it? We got another bangers planned for you guys. I've been doing a lot of these Monday shows, Monday morning shows. I usually do my hotspot videos in the morning. Monday is the one day I don't really do it. So what's popping? Hopefully you guys have been enjoying these Monday shows. Another thing we've been doing these collaboration shows with my friend Sarah from DDG Geopolitics. I want to introduce her now. My friend, geopolitical analyst. It's great to have my friend Sarah back from DDG Geopolitics. Sarah, what's popping? I think you're muted. Make sure you check your mic, Sarah.
Is it? Oh, hi guys. How are you? Mondays are not my favorite either. So I'm here.
Yeah, just to show you guys how down Sarah is. She's down to join us on a Monday morning and on the RBN, just talk shit. I saw this late last night. Are you praying for Joe Biden, Sarah?
No, I was not thinking about it at all, actually.
I think this is hilarious. Here's Nina Turner. I'm praying for former President Biden.
Why do they get like this? Why do they just because why do they do this to themselves?
Nina, they're not gonna love you, boo. There's nothing
they're never gonna love you, Nina. They're never gonna accept you or love you or anything like that. So this whole praying for Joe Biden is just making you look like a cuck.
Yeah, Syrian Girl should be coming soon, I think,
Yeah,
Sarah.
she's one of mine.
You guys know how we do. We it's a very chill, very fun show with me and Sarah. I'm sure Syrian Girl will pop in here very soon.
For a second,
We're not gonna
maybe the cancer wasn't real and they're just saying cancer because they don't want to admit that they knew he was senile and demented for that long. But I don't know, maybe it is cancer too. But he's definitely also senile.
The Democratic Party is historically unpopular, so they've been doing this strategy where they're going to blame everything on Biden. that's like their openly transparent strategy. You have Beto and them came out that said Biden screwed us over. Biden should have been transparent with the American people. Now Biden and his team, while the Democratic Party was trashing him, decided to come out with this news that he has cancer to deflect from the news story of Jake Tapper and the Democratic Shields come out with this book to expose Biden. It's so 100% transparent. Also, because I have family members, I have uncles who have prostate cancer. Unfortunately, it's in my family. That's something I got to look forward to. By the way, you don't get this deep into prostate cancer without you having it before. So the reason why this is kind of newsworthy, this is something that the Biden team obviously was covering up. Biden had a few fraudulent slips where he admitted he had cancer. So this guy clearly had cancer the entire time, which makes this extremely funny to me because you would never convince me that it's not hilarious that someone who was bombing cancer hospitals eventually would get cancer.
It's the karma.
Yeah, people like Nina Turner, the entirety of the Social Democrat, Daddy, please accept me, progressive Democrats. They all saying we want to pray for Joe Biden. How can you guys laugh at Joe Biden when he got cancer?
I don't even care to laugh. I don't care at all. I feel completely unfazed and indifferent. Like I don't care. This is how you should probably end. In pain, miserable, and with your horrible wife.
So you had Biden that was approving the bombing of cancer hospitals. Yeah, Biden that was arresting reporters that was calling out his genocide. Here's our friend Sam Husseini there being dragged away by the Biden administration. We covered the clip before. We have our guest Syrian Girl. Give me a thumbs up whenever you're ready, Syrian Girl. Thank you for joining us. I'll introduce you here soon. But Biden is the guy who bombed cancer hospitals. And I think it's very healthy to hate your oppressors. I think it's actually good to let the criminal ruling class know exactly how much we despise them. So with that said, I want to bring my guest in. We also have your friend Syrian Girl. This is the first time we having her on RBN. We had a lot of discourse on Syria in the Middle East over the last week.
Yeah, you have.
With Shahid Bosin. And then I was blessed to have Kevork. He came on for Syria analysis. He released a video. He released our interview on his channel, which was great for us as well. So it's great to have a geopolitical analyst, journalist, historian, writer. Thank you for joining us on RBN for the first time, Syrian Girl. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, it's a bit of a makeshift setup today. It's the first time I ever used this background and everything. So, and the lighting, I just had to set it up from scratch just before.
Yeah, no worries. Great to have you. I want to dive right into what we've been debating on RBN, the state of the Middle East. I had Shahid Bosin on, and he claimed that Syria was stable, for example. And I took issue with that. And once again, it's okay if people disagree with me, guys. To be clear, we're not like an echo chamber. I'm not upset with him disagreeing with my take on Syria. We're just here to discover the truth. Kevork was furious after hearing what she had to say, and then he came on, he corrected the record. One thing that she had said, and as an American, I'm very conscious about this as well. He questioned where I get my information from on Syria. So I'm like, okay, that's fair. And I mean, that's kind of a fair criticism. I listen to people like Kevork. Syrian Girl is another source I've read up and seen on Syria. So I want to get your analysis. That's all we're doing here is having a discourse to discover the truth about the Jelani regime in Syria. So will you say Syria is stable? How will you classify the state of the Middle East right now, Syrian girl? Once again, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks a lot. I don't think Syria is stable. I think it's a powder keg, and a second civil war that's waiting to happen. If not, it's already sort of begun. I mean, I think that the reason why Kavork was so outraged is because there was like a mass ethnic cleansing campaign against minorities in the coastal region that resulted in thousands of dead civilians. We also saw the videos of people being forced to bark on their knees before they're shot, like of old men being shot outside of their homes. So, like, to apply the label stable to that essentially kind of demeans their deaths and makes them irrelevant. I think that's where the anger comes in. But I think it's unstable in various ways. I mean, not only the minority groups in the coastal region, but the Druze minority group in Sweden, still heavily armed, not letting HTS, which is like the Jolani militia, in. You have the Kurdish militias in the northeast of the country. Yeah, they're saying that they're making deals with them, but there's still like potential for conflict there. You have the SNA, which is the Syrian National Army, which is largely more like controlled by Turkey, and most of its commanders have acquired Turkish citizenship over the last few years. They kind of have like a adversarial kind of rivalry between them and Jolani's HTS. But the interesting that's happening more recently that's going to cause instability is the fact that Jolani, who was a member of ISIS and then Al Qaeda, has been sitting with Trump and with various Zionist organizations. They've agreed to the recent sort of deal to get rid of sanctions on Syria, which haven't been removed yet. I think Congress still has to decide on that. But the deal was negotiated by a member of the Syrian Emergency Task Force, which is funded by the US State Department. And in the words of its founder, Muaz Mustafa, which was seen sitting next to Jolani, is essentially an extension of the United States government. Now, this is a man that supposedly fought the United States in Iraq when he was a member of ISI, but he was also imprisoned by the United States for decades. However, this deal with Trump involves him taking over the prison camps of ISIS in East Syria, which he was once an ISIS prisoner, just like them. So it's kind of like a strange thing, but they feel betrayed. I think that's the key takeaway. Also, the deal involves him getting rid of foreign fighters and removing them from positions of power, and also removing like Palestinian resistance factions and Lebanese resistance factions, as well as a different point to that, because the foreign fighters uniquely are within his own ranks. So one of the U.S. senators, I think her name was Levitt, she worded it very interestingly. She said to tell the foreign fighters to go home, which means that he has command of them, which is essentially what's happening now. In fact, they make up like 30 to 40% of his ranks, and that's why he's included a lot of them inside the defense ministry. You have like 6 Uyghur terrorists, but here's the thing. What's happening now is there's counter signaling to Trump and the SETF and this guy Muaz. He comes on NBC and he's like, Jolani's a changed man. He's now like woke LGBT, like he's your man. He's the new MBS. He's the new GCC, like poster boy, and he's a good-looking man, as Trump said. But I don't agree. But that's Trump's taste. In any case, that signaling is being countered by internal signaling of like, don't worry, brothers, we're like not gonna betray you, and the foreign fighters are greatly respected and you're here to stay. However, we are gonna like move you to a plantation because you can't really like be inside Syrian society because it's a very closed, it's like the North Korea of the Middle East essentially, and hasn't been exposed to, you know, outside foreigners, and it's this, all of those massacres, people immediately assume a foreigner did this, even though it's not necessarily the truth, you know. So the problem is that at the same time, ISIS is giving out reports saying, you know, Jolani is going to betray you, he's going to betray your cause, you should join ISIS ranks instead. So within HTS, some of the foreign fighters are beginning to become ISIS, which isn't that far of a bridge to jump. You know, it's quite a small like hop and a skip, because essentially they share the same ideology, and they don't want to have this normalization with Israel and the West that Jolani is doing, and he is doing it like because he recently handed over some corpses of Mossad, not Mossad, sorry, Israeli IDF that were buried inside Syria in Yarmouk camp, the Palestinian refugee camp. And he recently gave some intelligence documents pertaining to Ali Cohen, the the Israeli spy that was captured and hung in the center of Damascus. So that's kind of like, but they're every time something like this happens, there's an excuse for it. You know, there's like, oh, it was this Mossad operation that secretly snuck in and took the documents. Or, for example, one of the officials from the information ministry was recorded on a phone call with an Israeli journalist, which was then released, saying he wants to make peace with Israel. But his excuse was, I was tricked. But if you listen to the audio recording, it's very clear that he knew he was talking to an Israeli, which under the previous government, that would have never, ever been heard of. You do that, you're gonna go to prison. So the point is that like people are kind of like, obviously there's gonna be cracks forming, and the interesting final point, and I'm sorry I'm like rambling, point of interest about these foreigners like feeling betrayed, worrying that Jolani is gonna not do good on his promise to, you know, keep them in the ranks and make an Islamic state that's going to liberate Jerusalem, which was the claim. You know, they are joining ISIS, but one of Trump's deals with Jolani is that the US is going to help suppress that element and suppress ISIS, and they would have a not permanent but an indefinite mandate for the US to continuously bomb Syria until they get rid of these ISIS, which helped Jolani get into power in the first place. So we're in for a ride, you know, like all of these forces are at play. The US says like they're trying to keep Russia and China's influence outside of Syria. Russia is still in there. The Israelis are hell-bent on creating a David corridor, which is they want to take all of the land from Syria to Iraq, going through Daraa province, the Jolan, and Sueda. The Israelis have taken the mountains in the Jolan, Mount Hermon, is what you guys call it. We call it Jebel al-Sheikh, but it has like 30 to 40% of Syria's water supply. Like I don't want to, like maybe less than that, shall we say, that I don't want to give an incorrect estimate. So the situation is extremely volatile, and I don't think we are getting all of the elements that are at play. Particularly, like, okay, we have the minorities, but you also have like internal, like Syrian society, where people from the and this is the last thing, so I apologize again. People from Idlib province, where these guys have been holed up for 8 years, with all of the foreign fighters that are coming in. Their model of governance was like women in scarves and like covering their faces, and guys like foreign fighters everywhere. Jolani's forces, when they controlled Idlib, they shot a woman for adultery in the street. They were cutting off hands in the street. And that one of those ministers, the guy became the justice minister. The guy that shot a woman for adultery in the street became the justice minister. So, but when they can't apply that model on the capital. okay? And they can't apply it in Aleppo, but they definitely can't apply it in the capital. Because I'm from the capital, and I can tell you, like, the only time, like, really you're gonna see the people of the capital react is when someone tries to take their fun away. And recently that kind of happened when HCS shut up a bunch of restaurants and bars at night in Damascus, and people are like increasingly like, some of his men ride a bus and they're like, women and men should be segregated, or they enter a restaurant and they say women and men should be segregated, and everyone's like, okay, like, okay, thanks, bye. Nobody's gonna react. They all think that this person is just insane. So there's schisms in the society that it's not stable, but eventually we all hope that it will be, but just
Yes.
not at the cost of everybody's freedom and dignity and life.
Yeah. We are very rant friendly at RBN. And that was a great intro rant, since this is the first time we had you on RBN. Very informative. I don't even know where to even start because there's so much information packed in there. And that's exactly why we brought you on. Just we're here for different perspectives. And I think you gave a great perspective. Let me start here because there's so many things we could break down. I'm going to get Sarah in here as well if she want to share. I am seeing the entirety of the Middle East turn their back on Palestine, especially with the brutal offensive into Gaza. Like it's as bad as it's ever been. And as you have the genocide of the Palestinian people going on, you have Israel that is invading Syria. You mentioned the water. We bring that up all the time on the show. They season the water supply, season their natural resources. You had an Israeli aggression to implement their plan of a greater Israel. So to me, and I'm an American looking at the outside in, I will acknowledge that. But to me, it didn't make any sense to have the Syrian revolution and to weaken your own sovereign government. And right as Israel is preparing to launch their offensive, as they're becoming more aggressive, well, I guess that's relative, but they had the Likud party that's very open about what they wanted to accomplish. And despite everything that Israel is doing to Syria, they're still being aggressive. You have Jelani and you have the people who I call Muslim Zionists. I don't know how else to describe them other than that. As Israel is assaulting their country, helping the United States destabilize their country, Jelani is focusing on killing and persecuting religious minorities while joining the Zionist regime. Israeli and Syrian officials hold rare direct talks, Israeli source says. And this is something that Jelani has been working on for months now. There was a story we covered in December where Jelani was essentially begging Israel for normalized relations. And he was like, I can't believe Israel's still attacking us as a country. Like, can you imagine being this ridiculous? So, Syrian girl, I would love for you to respond to Jelani's and his supporters leaning towards Israel. And Shahid Bosen, he said he was confused why I call them Muslim Zionists. And there were some people who get upset for me saying that. But to me, how else can you describe them? These people who want to team up and side with Israel. One more last thing. I told you we're pretty rent-friendly here. Jelani is the same guy who said he wants Iran to pay reparations for funding the Assad regime. So the mentality of Jelani and the new Syrian government is not to focus on Israel. They promised the United States and the West they will help ratchet up tensions against Iran. Muslim Zionists is like the nicest way I could describe them. So, Syrian girl, do you have anything you want to add in this? Sarah, we can pass it to you if you want to chime in after this as well.
Can I do
Yeah,
say?
feel free.
I'll keep it short. Sarah.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, you haven't got a chance to speak. Have you seen that meme like that says "always has been"? And it's
Yeah.
that's exactly what comes to mind, because people might say, "Oh, what a surprise! He wants to normalize with Israel," but always has been. The Israelis were giving medical aid to HTS, which was then Al-Nusra Front and part of Al-Qaeda, on the Golan Heights border. Israel admits that they were giving 12 Syrian rebel groups weapons. Israel admits that Netanyahu said he takes credit for the fall of Assad and everything that happened in Syria. It was 100% strategically in their interest to bring in these Salafi doctrine forces that are going to break up the resistance axis and fight Hezbollah for them on their behalf, as well as destroy Syria's air defenses. So their treason is not a surprise. I mean, they've been traitors from the start. But what is the surprising part is why isn't Israel going for it? You know, and the truth is that I hope it begins to dawn on people is that Israel does not want peace. Okay, these useful idiots destroyed their country, and now they have no defenses, no chemical weapons, no tanks, no air defense, no planes. They did it like, and they want to rule over its ashes. Whereas Israel is like, you know what, we can make more ash, and now we're gonna switch. We're gonna flip. We're gonna pretend we care about minorities, even though we spent the last 14 years destroying them. And the Qataris and the Gulf Arab states, they're trying to like lure the US into preventing Israel from getting that plan, which is Greater Israel. But any Syrian that thinks that they can beg and plead in order for Israel to save them and in order to stop Israel from destroying them is going to be disappointed. Israel does not want peace. And I don't know how much destruction it sometimes can take to get that into people's head. But they have like this like broken, the people that you described, they have this broken, servile mentality. Finally, because I know Sarah should jump in too, but finally I wanted to say that, God, I've lost it. I might remember.
I want to talk about the lifting of the sanctions, and Nick, stop me if I get ahead. So before Jolani and al-Shara even met on May 11th, some guy named Jonathan Bass, and they're describing him as a pro-Trump activist. I tried to look into this guy. I can't get that much info. And then they had a meeting. He had a meeting with al-Shara in Damascus, where they are the one. It was at that meeting that they set up this idea of the construction of a Trump Tower. Also, I was wondering if you knew anything about that meeting. And then as well as so Trump, in order to lift the sanctions, Jolani has to normalize with Israel, expel all foreign terrorists, and help manage ISIS detainees in U.S.-controlled areas of eastern Syria. Could you go over each of those three kind of and how they're like difficult or why they're unattainable?
Absolutely. And I think that this would have been better if I had it before my initial rant. But I did want to say, funny story, that Jonathan guy, what was his name? Jonathan Bass.
Yeah.
I looked into him. It seems like he's some kind of a businessman. And again, the individual that brought him to Jolani was this Mawaz Mustafa guy, who is the head of the Syrian ETF, the Syrian Emergency Task Force. Thing is, he's not Syrian. He's actually a Palestinian, which is a Zionist, which goes, Nick, to your Muslim Zionism thing. And I do use the term Muslim Zionism, but I use it in two ways. First, the way in which you describe, in which Muslims who are okay with the existence of Israel, but also another way is that Muslims that believe they are entitled to the land of the Levant on the basis of their religion, right? Like, and they want to replace us, they want to take our land and ethnically cleanse us because they think like God gave them the right to our land by virtue of their religion. So that's another way you can describe Muslim Zionism. But in any case, those two groups of people, they don't always clash. In any case, Jolani met with this guy, Jonathan Bass. Mawaz Mustafa brought him there. But if you watch their Twitter, Jonathan Bass keeps tweeting at like Mawaz Mustafa, telling him, take me out of your tweets. Like, I don't want anything to do with your organization.
I had no idea. I'm going to go look it up now.
I'm bringing you the gossip. This is like a geopolitics gossip show. You have to check it out. It's funny. I don't know what beef he had, but the funny part is Mawaz is like, nope. You're he's refusing to take him out. So it seemed like he was a low-key guy, but some kind of oil business.
Jonathan Bass, have nothing to do with this organization. Muaz will not remove my name from his tweet. I have nothing to do with this organization. I have requested my name to be removed and was told to sue them by Muaz.
See? And we free Jonathan Bass. We need to start a campaign. That poor man. He's not getting the word out. But yeah, as to your list of demands, why it's difficult. First of all, we said getting rid of ISIS, foreign fighters. Well, it's not actually ISIS. Sorry, getting rid of foreign fighters is going to create schisms within his own forces. Like a large percentage of them are foreign fighters. So he's going to weaken his own forces. That's going to take time. And that's why Jolani has asked for help from the US to achieve this objective of getting rid of the foreign fighters. The reason that they are threatened by the foreign fighters is, this is like a controlled demolition of Syria, and they don't want anyone to go crazy and fight Israel at any one point. They need Israel to be protected while it's gradually destroying Syria and stealing its land in stages. Removing the Palestinians is another thing that's going to be difficult because people are going to accuse him of treason, and people who bought into this lie that they're going to be freeing Jerusalem are going to be pissed. The whole notion of this civil war in Syria was built around the idea not only that they're fighting corruption and a dictatorship, that's the delusion of some of the individuals, but the other delusion was that Assad was secretly working with Israel. And in a US policy document, describing the dominant narratives amongst the Syrian people, they cite this particular conspiracy theory as, I forget the exact wording, but conducive to uprisings, if they push this narrative. So people are very confused. Also, a lot of people that supported the revolution also were confused because they thought that Assad was secretly supporting Jolani. The conspiracies just keep, Syria is full of conspiracies, and some of them are QAnon level insanity. And you see a lot of these QAnon level Muslims that is, trust the plan. Jolani is playing 5D chess, and Israel is last. They literally are writing, Jolani is playing 5G chess in Arabic. So, it's the QAnon of the Middle East. Anyway, I digress. He's going to have difficulty because the foreign fighters are his men. He's going to have difficulty because they can defect and join ISIS. And then the US is going to have a prolonged stay in Syria, which he was supposed to be the guy that's fighting the West. So that's going to be difficult for him. But the Israeli normalization is going to be probably the most bitter pill to swallow, because the Syrian people are part of the Levant, and they're seeing what's happening to Palestinians. They're seeing what's happening to the Lebanese. But the 14 years of war has crushed the spirit of resistance for a lot of people. And they think that maybe this is the best way out in some ways. But again, there are Syrians in the Jolan still, and they celebrate Syrian Independence Day every year. Our water is there. It's our land. So it's not going to be an easy, I think he's going to find it very, very difficult to give it away. He might say, okay, we'll take the mountain and you go back to 1967 and we'll sign a ceasefire agreement again. Israel's not going to give them back the mountain. Israel is not going to give back the land that they stole after the fall of Assad without another war. Okay? Quote me on that. So it's going to be very difficult. But what might help is that, the thing is that Syria has always had an antagonistic relationship with Turkey, because Turkey also stole a piece of Syrian land, which is full of water, and it's a coastal area. It's called Hatay province. That's what the Turks call it anyway. And Syrians have never forgotten that until Jolani, because in Idlib, they were drawing Syria's maps without that region. and he's all in. They're all in Turkey's pocket. So time will tell if they, if the Syrians catch wind of Jolani also giving away Hatay province, it will really seal the deal on his treason. But I think that's in their mind more of a lost cause than the Jolan, because the Syrians in Hatay were still there and they were integrated into the Turkish-speaking population a little bit more, whereas with the Israelis, they mostly ethnically cleansed the entire population of the Jolan, except for a small Druze village and a small Christian village, but 12% of the Christians and the Sunnis were wiped out. Again, I digress.
Yeah.
Well, let me follow up. The Golan Heights. So in the normalization demands, the first one is obviously normalization with Israel, or I'm sorry, the sanctions lifting demands.
And earlier I said 1967. I meant 1974. Sorry.
That's okay. But so there, one of the contested areas that obviously is the Golan Heights. Now, the interesting thing about the Golan Heights now is that Trump has a settlement in the Golan Heights named after him. Jolani literally means from the Golan Heights. So the relinquishing of the Golan Heights probably has to be done because of Miriam Adelson and Trump obviously having being beholden to Adelson and having the settlement in there. But Jolani's going to look like a complete fool if he gives up the Golan Heights, and he's named after the Golan Heights. So, what do you think?
Well, that was part of the selling point, right? Like, this guy's going to free the Jolan. Like, because his name is supposedly Ahmed al-Shara, although even though in Iraq, when he was arrested, it was arrested by a completely different name. So there's a big question mark on this guy. But he was given the Al-Qaeda name, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, which suggests that he's going to free the Jolan. As you said, so, the Jolani persona is going to have to be completely thrown out in order to make this deal. But the key is, like, he's going to have to, look, it's going to be really hard. He's going to sell this, as I said, it's going to be like, he's going to try to get Israel to go back to the 1974 ceasefire agreement. That's the idea. Like, that's the plan. And he's like saying, if that's the first step in Syria signing the Abraham Accords, in complete capitulation and the abandonment of the Palestinians, which, to be like honest, like as a Syrian, maybe it's just me, but I would rather never, rather never see an inch of that land than surrender the Palestinian cause. Because to me, the Palestinian cause is more important than the Jolan, and the Jolan provides a good casus belli to involve ourselves in the Palestinian cause. Like, just to be as a blanketed statement. But for these people, no, they don't care about that. According to Jolani, no, they don't care about that. So he's trying to sell his normalization as going back to the 1974 ceasefire line, but eventually, like, everything is on the table because the Saudi Arabians are steering the wheel, and we know that they want to sign the Abraham Accords in spite of the genocide that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about this new Middle East. I'm shaking at my core to see so many Arab leaders betray the Palestinian cause. This was the picture that we covered before, which is why I understand for the people who just now get into geopolitics why Syria could be confusing. To me, I think, and I said this many times on the channel, I think Israel-Palestine is actually really easy to understand. It's apartheid, settler colonialism. It's not that fucking hard to understand. It's not a religious struggle. It's very easy to understand. Syria, because of what you mentioned, Sarah and Girl and Sarah, there are these people who spread bullshit. And I hear it all the time when people like Jelani playing Fadi, Chad, Jelani is actually the path we need to resist. They will say stuff that is so out there. I'm an American trying to piece things together. They'll say stuff along. I will question everything I learned. Well, I'm like, are you guys serious? Did I miss something? Why would you possibly say this guy? This like he's been obvious. I've been studying this issue for a while. I've been seeing him do everything he can to get this friendly relationship with the United States and Israel. For people to believe that he's on the side of the Palestinians, it's mind-numbingly dumb. And I want to ask you about this new Middle East because we're seeing this is the video I saw earlier. I thought it was funny because it just shows the mindset of these people. This is the UAE. This is like Muslim Zionists. Now, once again, I'm not an expert at traditions in the Middle East, but to me, waving your hair as someone who's funding a genocide is kind of beyond the pale. That's my thought. So, but my question in general, this is more of a funny point, because I find these people weird. I find them traitors of the Palestinian people in resistance. So what your state of the current Middle East? So many of these Arab leaders, these giant states that want to bend the knee to the United States during this time with the aggression we are seeing in Gaza. Do you have any reaction, Syrian girl? Then we go Sarah. But this
my reaction. This is in the UAE, by the way. But my reaction is that I mean, the UAE has openly Zionized now. They've signed the Abraham Accords. Okay, so you're looking at Muslim Zionism right here.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like if you roll back even 5-7 years ago, like Saudi Arabia, women couldn't even drive. So things have been accelerating in a strange way, and now we have J-Lo dancing in Mecca. So this dance, though, the hair dance, is a traditional Gulf Arab dance. I've posted in the private chat the Iraqi version for your enjoyment because I think it's like way cooler. So, but this kind of dance does not. Maybe you can like go ahead and yeah, there you go. There she goes. It gets crazier around the middle. I just really enjoy this. We don't have anything like this in Syria because we're not part of the Gulf. We're part of the Levant. So we have a completely different kind of dance.
This strikes me as much different than
it gets crazier. You got
lines of women kind of shaking their hair at Trump. I just thought it looked kind of spooky. This doesn't look.
Hair is that hair was really black and really long, and the
plus I expect this from an Iraqi woman. I've met many Iraqi women, and they're all crazy. So this is to be expected from an Iraqi woman.
I don't know, man. She invited to the barbecue.
You haven't. I'm sure every Iraqi is gonna hate me.
I think it's great.
I apologize, guys. I apologize, but I really genuinely think she's great.
Now she's invited to the barbecue. She's 100% invited to the barbecue with those 100%
invited. Like that would have been cool. That's what they should have had.
Yeah, see, that's cool. That's entertaining.
Yeah,
the one UAE was like, what are we doing here?
See, once again, I wasn't judging the tradition. I just think it was disgusting that they was doing this at a war criminal. I think that was kind of tacky.
That's what I thought. I thought, like, for me, it struck me as like, obviously I'm not Muslim. I was like, wow, they're showing their hair. They're waving it at a foreign leader. This is something that's very like private and respectful, and they're doing it to Trump. That was my thought too, Nick.
I think the message is we are prepared to prostitute ourselves for you, right? Like that's the message that I got from it.
Yes, exactly. You're not Muslim. We're showing our hair to you. We're like here for the taking, kind of thing. Not a sexual way, but in like a business sort of.
We are prepared to degrade ourselves.
Yes, and a lot of Muslims commented that underneath. They're like, keep bending the knee to the Westerners. Keep bending the knee. You know what? Now I'm going to ask both of you guys. So leading up to this, we had the fake news, which most of us thought it was fake. Even Nick and I think we streamed about it. The separation or the rift between Bibi.
Oh, you read my mind.
Right. Do you think that they did that prior to this trip to kind of make the trip more smooth for the people? Because we know that the leaders don't really care either way, but for the people to be like, all right, well, he's not really cool with Bibi right now.
Well, yeah, it was sold as, oh, we've pulled the Americans away from Israel with our Qatari money and our $1 trillion investments, and now there's gonna be peace, and Israel's gonna be stopped, and then like now they're doing Operation Gideon Chariots, and Hamas is like, they told us they would, if we give up this hostage or prisoner of war because that he is a soldier, that there'll be a ceasefire, and Wilcock gave us our word that he would be responsible for it. Seems like either we believe Israel went rogue, or the whole thing was a sham. I'm gonna look. Either is possible, but I'm gonna go with the convenient sham position.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I want to get your perspective on that regarding what you mentioned earlier with the hair shake. That's why we'll discuss it, because Ibrahim Traore and African leaders have there are many African leaders who criticize sellout African leaders for degrading themselves on international trips. It's a trend among Pan-Africanists to call for African leaders to host summit in their own continent. So what the West would do to degrade African leaders, they will hold African summits in Italy, for example. They will have an African summit in New York. And just to highlight how ridiculous that is, can you imagine if they had a European summit in South Africa? How ridiculous that would be.
That's going worse, okay?
Yeah,
Can you imagine that Netanyahu's wife brings kilos of dirty laundry for the US to wash every time she visits the United States? She brings like 12 suitcases of dirty laundry because the US will wash it for her for free.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But I know it may sound like I'm maybe nitpicking here, but until I see one of these white European countries, until I see their women shaking their hair at Arab leaders, like can you imagine a bunch of suburbanite Americans shaking their hair honoring Arab leaders? That will never happen. So maybe I'm being overly sensitive, but until I see that, I know you're laughing because the idea is hilarious. Just the idea
is hilarious, but I have watched Congress give something like 32 standing ovations for Netanyahu. And it lasted. I found that pretty hilarious too.
And I'm glad you addressed this because we've been discussing this over the last week. The shift, the distancing between Trump and Netanyahu, whether it's real or not. Obviously, the United States is not breaking from Israel at all, and this is the narrative. Obviously, you got all the Zionist media that pumping this up. I want to ask you guys, why do you think they're doing this? I discussed this, my theory. I want to hear your take. But Trump says, and this is just an example of the stories they're pushing and the reason why people are believing this. Trump says he did not consult Israel before restoring ties with Syria. So now they're saying that Israelis are furious because of Trump negotiating with Iran, because he's negotiating and normalizing ties with Syria without Israel's permission. So I want to get your guys' take, because I have a few other receipts I can show to show you guys why this is ridiculous. But why do you guys think? I think we are on agreement that this is mostly a fraud. But I'm gonna ask you guys, why do you think they're doing this? Is there a plan?
It's good cop, bad cop.
Oh my God! Somebody in the chat just said that. You guys are.
Yeah, Jim, always has good comments.
I can elaborate afterwards.
Go elaborate. Yeah.
Oh, what about you? I don't want to.
I agree. And plus, this gives Trump is the king of throwing his base these little wins. You can have a little win here, a little win here. It keeps them satiated. It keeps them in the game. They're cool with him giving Bibi, some cold shoulder that totally revs them up. They're very happy and placated with the very, very bare minimum. So this serves a dual purpose of, doing the good cop, bad cop. It helps with his image retention in the Gulf. People don't get the people themselves, not the leaders, don't get too he's clearly in cahoots with the Zionists, and then MAGA gets to say, oh, our president won't be bullied. See, he's even saying something to Bibi, and in the end, they're all just still doing business together anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Chariots is going off to them. I was just looking at it while you guys were talking because you mentioned it. It's going off without a hitch. We're doing everything we can to help them to do this Gideon's Chariots operation. And all that we did, again, another little bone to placate people was to force Israel to put aid trucks through. The aid trucks are being monitored, and all of the checkpoints are being manned by a private company from the United States called UG Solutions. So they're all in business together, and they're just trying to make it look like, no, stop, don't do that genocide, no.
Exactly. It's exactly it. But the thing is, if you listen to Trump, what did he say? He said, we will do, this is like a few months ago, we will do whatever Israel decides. We're with them with whatever they decide. He also said that he wants to control Gaza. It's great real estate. We want to control it. We want to own it. We want to kick all the Palestinians out of it, put them somewhere else to keep them safe. So, you know, and like the guy, then he goes to Saudi Arabia and he's like, oh, they're suffering a lot. Yeah, no, we care. Like, yeah, he's an agent of chaos. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. But somewhat like in my analysis, I always think, who's taking the lead, the US or Israel? You know, and I think that if it was just the US doing what would be in its own interests, I think calming down the region, making these deals with all of these countries that can make massive investments and stabilize the region for construction probably would be in the US's interests, but it's not in Israel's interests. The Ahmed al-Shara thing is also unique because Israel wants to keep Syria destroyed, and their objective is this Balkanization Operation David corridor. So if Trump becomes too nice with the former Al Qaeda guy, but then it's going to be difficult for them to sell we're going to have to kill him because we're going to have to steal Syrian land because Al Qaeda. Like, that's Israel's next step after putting Al Qaeda there in the first place. So that can cause like an issue for them. But again, I think that we're really like, when I see how many Zionist flies were buzzing around the Syrian Emergency Task Force, who was funded, by these individuals. The fact is that that organization brought John McCain into Syria in 2012. Like, it just, to me, it seems like two factions infighting. One of them just wants total victory, greater Israel, and one of them is thinking, maybe we should take this deal. We won't give up any land we stole already, but maybe we should, see the Syrians on their knees in complete capitulation, because we want to be like part of the neighborhood. They want to be accepted by the Arabs, and a genocide is slightly inconvenient for that. Like, it's not a death blow, obviously, because the people are somehow given it's like an opium of the masses. They're desensitized, and they're kind of given some sleeping pills in the form of, oh, don't worry, the Muslims will win in the end, and the Arabs are playing 5D chess, and they're just negotiating to make everything nice and ceasefire. And now Operation Gideon Chariots blows that all up. So I think Operation Gideon Chariots is a sort of what you would expect ultimately from Stage 5 Zionism, because this is it. This is what they are. Like, they are about killing and taking people's land. And if you take that away from them, what are they? Do you know what Israel? What is Israel without that? Does it exist? If there's an Israel where everybody who is either Muslim or Christian or Jewish has equal rights, does it really exist anymore? Because eventually it's going to be just absorbed into the region. So, like, there's all these conflicting forces, but the force on the Netanyahu side that wants total dominance by force is obviously the one that won, and the US has to go along with it, maybe because of all of the internal Zionist forces that keep that structure together. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just these are just my pontifications.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about regarding stealing being Zionist core identity. Zion is still so much. Like they don't have a culture. Their culture is stealing. Like whenever they like try to make their own cuisine, they'll come out with these dishes that are absolute trash. So then they'll steal a Palestinian cuisine and they will rename it. And they'll give it an Israeli Hebrew like name and say, "Oh, this is you see Israeli cuisine." Like, no, you just stole that from a Palestinian. That's what they do all the time. They do that with Palestinian fashion. That's all they do. Now, you guys' analysis, I 100% agree with. We were discussing this with Glenn. Obviously, there are different factions within the empire. Actually, let me show you guys this one first. If you're someone who's anti-imperialist like me, there's no real split because it's not like Trump is actually going to support a Palestinian state. It's not like he's gonna break with Israel and end the diplomatic immunity that the United States.
They would literally kill him.
Yeah, for sure, they definitely would. And that's what when I talked about this with Glenn Greenwald yesterday, we came to agreement that there's no actual break in terms of what the separation between the United States and Israel's empire. If they did, they would actually kill them, and they'll actually be successful this time. Yeah. There is a strategic difference between members of the ruling class because the Likud party is just that batshit crazy. Like the Likud party, and this is my take, feel free to disagree, the Likud party is destabilizing the Zionist entity and project. And the United States, who are diehard Zionists, they want to see the Zionist entity thrive. So because the Likud party is leading Zionism off of a cliff, you have the United States that's trying to reel them back in. That's how I see it.
Exactly. The United States is like, no. The United States is basically there to tell the Arabs, Trump with Jared Kushner on his shoulder, like, no, Arabs, we assure you, it's not a genocidal state that's going to steal your land, and it's not going to be expansionist forever. It's just the Palestinians are genociding a little bit, but don't worry, like, you can trust us. So that's like what they're trying to like smooth things out for them, I think.
Yeah,
that's the whole two-state solution idea in my mind.
Exactly. And the reason why I say this is not a true break, because if there's a true break, you will have Donald Trump doing to Netanyahu what he did to Zelensky because of what the offensive we're seeing in Gaza. Here's just one headline. What's going on? Just last night, it was a slaughter last night. At least 70 people have been killed in Gaza this morning. Just this morning. Is Donald Trump doing anything to end this? So this is what a real break will look like. And we tell you the strategic differences between the United States and Israel, but a real break will be ending this support, period. But I think you want to feel free.
Did they do that? Like, did Trump say we're not going to give them weapons anymore? Because I do distinctly remember Netanyahu saying, "Oh, we don't need America, we'll go alone." I think that Israel is pissed that the U.S. didn't commit suicide by going to war with Iran on his behalf a little bit. But I don't, and Trump claims that was Qatar's doing. They convinced them that they can make a deal. So
I think Syrian girl got disconnected. There she is. I'll put her back in here. Yeah, it's all good. That happened.
Good. I digress. I forgot what we were talking about. I lost my spot.
Let me show you guys this. We're gonna wrap up here soon. I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. We can keep this a great 1 hour foreign policy power hour here. But I want to show you guys this because the Trump administration themselves, they haven't been necessarily great.
I didn't see this. That's what you're pulling up right now, Steve Witkoff.
So I wanted to say this to the end because they've been running this narrative, but even the Trump administration, they haven't been necessarily great at maintaining it. Like, if you actually been paying attention to
what a liar.
So here is Steve Witkoff. I don't think there's any daylight between Trump position and Netanyahu's position. So let me play this one first, and I'll play the other clip.
The president, John, is a humanitarian, and I think that everyone is concerned about the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. That said, it is a very complicated situation there. Logistically, I don't think there's any daylight between President Trump's position and Prime Minister Netanyahu's position. The issue now is, I think
there's no daylight between them, he says.
The issue now is, how do we logistically get all of those trucks into Gaza? How do we set up the aid stations? There are many initiatives that we're working on to address this. The president,
or that I found from Hotspot, and it'll be last one I play, and then I'll get your guys' thoughts. Trump did this interview, what, a few days ago?
Yeah, that was on his return, so that was Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I'm a little bit late on this clip because it was a few days ago. But you guys know our friends at Hotspot, they always provide. So let me play this clip and I'll get you guys to respond. Here's Donald Trump responding if he's frustrated with Netanyahu.
Are you frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation.
Bro, you had one job, bro. You had one job. Your only job was to maintain this illusion. And he immediately broke character. So, sorry, let me continue. Immediately broke character.
Are you frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation.
What was that?
I said isn't that when he's gotten back, he's left the Arabs behind. But then I'm looking at the background, and I clearly know, like, he's saying this while he's in some kind of an Arab state.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't know exactly where they was. I know this interview.
It's a Gulf Arab.
Yeah.
So you see when you see that pot in the middle there?
Yeah,
that pot indicates they're in a Gulf Arab state.
Yeah, they definitely was in the middle of the Middle East trip while this interview was going on, though. 100%. Let's continue.
He's got a tough situation. You have to remember there was an October 7th that everyone forgets. It was one of the most violent days in the history of the world, not the Middle East, the world. When you look at the tapes.
Does that sound like someone who's breaking from Israel?
No, it sounds like somebody who's towing the line completely.
Let me finish the last 15 seconds. I'll give you guys final thoughts here.
And the tapes are there for everyone to see. So he has that problem. That problem should have never happened. Now, if I were president, that problem wouldn't have happened because Iran had no money. They were stone cold broke.
Are you frustrated?
real great.
I love how he could take credit for something that he never did.
Any final reactions to this story? Anything else you want to add regarding the Trump Netanyahu breakup? We will begin to wrap here soon. Sarah, any final thoughts, Syrian girl? Anything you want to add?
I am ready to take a brain break from Trump and Bibi's tumultuous relationship for like 2 days.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
It's directed towards Iran. Like, get the bomb. Okay,
yes.
because Blackout is not to be trusted. I think the last few days have proven that.
Yeah, I know they're strongly against the nuclear bomb for religious and moral reasons because they, unlike the barbarians in the West, they can't even imagine doing something like that. Wink, wink, looking right at you, America. They couldn't even imagine doing something like that, like dropping a nuclear bomb on the city. Wouldn't that be crazy, looking right at you, America? So there are a lot of people in Iran that couldn't even imagine that. That's why they've been against it. But I agree. They should get the goddamn bomb for the sake of their national security.
That's probably true.
For the sake of the national security. Sarah, do you mind? I want to ask you about this. Because we can do just one more quick little topic I want to ask you about before we wrap up. Because I know you've been following this. And I haven't. I wish I spent more time in Romania because what's going on in Romania is crazy. They had an election. And then the person that the establishment hated won, and then they canceled the election and banned that candidate from running, and now they finally got the result that they like now. So, Sarah, I was want to end. This is a quick. What the hell is going on with Romania? I know you guys have been following this.
The first election was nullified illegally for quote unquote Russian interference, and they were alleging that the candidate was creating a fascist organization. So they ran this other guy, George Simeon, kind of in the other guy's place as a substitute, and he wound up losing, which I am shocked about. But in the lead up to the election, we're getting in the days leading up to it, we're getting information that EU governments were asking Telegram to suppress discourse about this guy. So I don't know what will happen Apparently, this guy is a globalist, EU sort of friendly candidate, and the other guy was obviously a nationalist, anti-NATO. Romanians are very scared that they'll be sent off to war for Ukraine or with Ukraine. I'm not really sure what's going to happen in Romania. I would expect some turmoil, civil
I
turmoil.
know they're fucked because I see the CNN, I seen Washington Post celebrating.
Yeah.
Like the second I saw they celebrate, they said the pro-EU, pro-democracy candidate won. I'm like, oh, they're fucked.
Yeah. He's very pro-NATO, and NATO's building a base in Romania. It was one of the policies that they all ran on, was either going to stop it or in support of it. He was in support of it, and he won. So, yeah.
It must have been a close call if he was relieved.
54% he won.
Yeah.
So not too much of
He
a
won.
landslide. Yeah.
Don't you guys know the best way to defend democracy is to run an election? And if you don't get the winner you want, you cancel that election, you ban that guy from running. You do the damn election how many times it takes until you get the winner you want. And then you celebrate. That's what they're doing. That's why I had to ask you this before we wrap up. Oh, another great show with Sarah DDG. Great to meet you, Syrian girl. Great to have you on RBN first time. Very fun.
It was really fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Any last thoughts, Syrian girl? Anything you want to shout out? Make sure you guys follow Syrian girl on Twitter. I know you guys have fun spaces for sure.
Thanks, everyone. It's Partisan Girl on Twitter. It's Syrian Girl Partisan on YouTube, where I'm trying to hit 100K for the first time in 12 years. So, and also I have a Telegram, which is Partisan Girl as well. So thank you so much, Nick, for having me on. Yeah. Also, I'm on Facebook, but I never use it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Syrian girl. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, support Partisan Girl on X and YouTube as well. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Peace out.
Thank you very much.